Okay, class, picking up where we left off at, we were supposed to factor out a 2 for our numerator. So we factor out 2, that will leave us negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 10 all over 2. Now we know these 2's will simplify out. And then our final answer here, I'm going to write it down here for lack of space, will be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 10. This will be our final answer for C. Now we come here to D. We have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of a negative 160. So we know we're going to factor out an I. So it'll be negative 4 plus or minus. Now, we know we factor out I, but the perfect square here will be 16. And we'll also be left with the square root of 10. Now you can write the square root of 10 next to it. Yes, you have a question?
The negative 4, you brought it down as a 2 instead of a negative 4.
Talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay, I factored out 2. Remember we factored out 2 here?
Yeah, but then you factored out the 2 that you already factored out.
No. See, 2 comes out of 4 and leaves us negative 2. Right, that's how the negative 4 became a negative 2.
What happens to the 2 that's in front of the 10?
Okay, this actually becomes 1, and 1 times the square root of 10 is just the square root of 10.
So when you factor out the 2, you factor it out from negative 4 and the 2.
Right. Okay. Now, with this next problem here, remember, we have I square root of 16, and next to it, we should put the square root of 10. I didn't leave myself enough space, but you all have the space. So that would be the square root of 10. Matter of fact, let me just erase this and give myself the space. I don't know why it jumps like this, but it does. Alright, so let me give myself the space here. So it'll be negative 4 plus or minus I square root of 16 times the square root of 10 all over 2. So then this will end up being negative 4 plus or minus. The square root of 16 is 4, so that will give us 4I square root 10 all over 2. I don't know what it is about these 4's. They keep having these little lines making it look like a 9. Okay, now, with this negative 4 and 4I, we could both factor out 2's here. Or actually a 4. We could factor out 4. And this will give us negative 1 plus or minus I square root 10. And that'll be all over 2. Now 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. So our final answer for this problem, we can actually multiply 2 by everything in here. So it'll be negative 2 plus or minus 2I square root 10. And that will be our final answer for this problem. Now, we scroll down here to this next problem. Now we have E and F. Now, if you notice, we had negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 1200 over 4. Now, the square root of 1200, we could factor out 400. So we would add the square root of 400 times the square root of 3 all over, that'll be 40. The square root of 400 will give us 20. So it'd be negative 8 plus or minus 20 square root 3 all over 40. Now with 8 and 20, they both have 4 in common. So we'll factor out 4. Then that will give us negative 2 plus or minus 5 square root 3 all over 40. For some reason it's not letting me get rid of that 40. So that'll be 40, and we factored out 4 here. So now 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 40 10 times. So our final answer here would be, actually, let me write it down here, to be negative 2 plus or minus 5 times the square root of 3 all over 10. And that would be the final answer here. Now we come here to F. Now we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of a negative 128. Now we would have a negative 4 plus or minus. Now we know we're going to factor out an I. Now we have to factor out the perfect square here. That will give us, I believe the highest perfect square here is 64. 64 times 2 would give us 128. That's all over 20. So this would give us negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 64, we know is 8 times I, which will give us 8I, square root of 2, all over 20. Now we can factor out a 4 here. So if we factor out 4, we will add negative 1 plus or minus 2I root 2. And that'll be all over 20. Now 4 and 20, 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 25 times. So our final answer here would be negative 1 plus or minus 2I square root of 2 all over 5. Now we scroll down to the next page. Now it tells us in the directions that I wrote over, but you will be able to see in your course pack. It tells us to solve the following using the square root method. So for A, we know we would take the square root of both sides. So the square root of x squared is x. The square root of a negative 25 is plus or minus 5I. And that would take care of A. Now B, we would take the square root of both sides. And then that would give us t plus 5 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 64 is 8I. So we would subtract 5 on both sides. And t is equal to negative 5 plus or minus 8I. Now, we come down here to C and D. Now we would take the square root of both sides. And this will give us 2A plus 4 is equal to plus or minus 2I. Now we will subtract 4 on both sides. So we add 2A equals negative 4 plus or minus 2I. Then we would divide each side by 2. We have A is equal to, now negative 4 and 2I both has 2 in common. So we can factor out a 2. That will leave us negative 2 plus or minus I, all divided by 2. These 2's will simplify out, and A is equal to negative 2 plus or minus I. And that will be the final answer for C. Now D, our last problem. We will take the square root of both sides. And then we will have x minus 3 is equal to, now, we know we will pull out an I, and it'll be plus, positive, or negative. But 32, we have a perfect square of 16 and 32. So that'll break down the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. So we have x minus 3 equals to positive or negative. Square root of 16 is 4 times I is 4I, square root of 2. Now we will add 3 on both sides. We have x is equal to 3 plus or minus 4I square root of 2. And we are done. Are there any questions? Yes. All right, so we are done.